The evening had started like any other for the young woman. She had saved up for months to treat herself to a meal at La Belle Étoile, one of the most luxurious restaurants in the city. It wasn't just about the food, it was about the experience, the feeling of being someone important, even if just for one night. She had chosen her outfit carefully, a simple but elegant black dress, her hair neatly styled, and a pair of heels she rarely wore. As she walked through the grand entrance, her heart pounded with excitement. The chandeliers glittered, the waiters moved with practiced grace, and the soft hum of conversation filled the air. But the moment she stepped inside, she felt the weight of judgmental stares. The host, a tall man with a perfectly tailored suit, looked her up and down with barely concealed disdain. "Do you have a reservation?" he asked, his tone implying he already knew the answer. She swallowed hard. "Yes, under." Before she could finish, he cut her off. "Right this way," he said, though his voice lacked warmth. He led her not to the main dining area with its plush chairs and candlelit tables, but to a small, dimly lit corner near the kitchen. The clatter of dishes and the occasional shout from the staff made it clear, this was where they seated the unimportant guests. Her cheeks burned, but she forced a smile. Maybe the food would make up for it. When the menu arrived, her stomach dropped. The prices were far higher than what she had seen online. She had budgeted carefully, but one dish alone would wipe out half her savings. Hesitating, she ordered the cheapest appetizer and a glass of water. The waiter, a younger man with a bored expression, barely nodded before walking away. Around her, laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. Well-dressed couples toasted, businessmen celebrated deals, and influencers took photos of their gourmet dishes. She sat there, feeling smaller by the minute. Then it happened. A group at the next table, a man in an expensive watch and his companions, noticed her. One of them smirked, whispering something to the others. They glanced her way, and then burst into quiet laughter. Her hands trembled as she gripped her napkin. Were they laughing at her? At her dress? At the fact she was sitting alone in the worst spot in the restaurant? The waiter returned with her small plate, placing it down without a word. The portion was tiny, barely a bite. She ate slowly, fighting back tears. This wasn't the magical experience she had dreamed of. This was humiliation. When the bill came, she paid quickly, leaving no tip, not out of spite, but because she couldn't afford to. As she walked out, the host didn't even glance her way. The night air hit her face, cold and unwelcoming. She took a deep breath, blinking away the sting in her eyes. Tomorrow was another day. She would forget this. But fate had other plans. The next morning, as she stepped out of her modest apartment, she froze. Parked right in front was a sleek black SUV, its tinted windows hiding whoever sat inside. The door opened, and a well-dressed man stepped out. Her breath caught. It was the same man from the restaurant, the one with the expensive watch who had laughed at her. Except this time, he wasn't smiling. The woman's heart pounded as the man from the restaurant stepped out of the black SUV. His sharp suit, polished shoes, and cold stare made her instinctively take a step back. Was he here to mock her again? Had he followed her home? Before she could turn away, he spoke. "Wait." His voice was firm but not unkind. She hesitated, gripping her bag tighter. "What do you want?" The man sighed, rubbing his temple as if frustrated with himself. "Last night, that wasn't right." She blinked. Was this some kind of joke? The way he and his friends had laughed at her, she hadn't imagined it. "I own that restaurant," he continued. "And what happened to you shouldn't have happened." Her mouth fell open. He was the owner. That explained the arrogance, the way the staff had treated her differently. But why was he here now? "I saw how they seated you," he said. "How they ignored you. And then my idiot friends made it worse." He shook his head. I didn't realize until after you left. She crossed her arms, still wary. So what? You came to apologize? Not just that. He reached into his coat pocket, and for a wild second, she thought he might pull out money, some kind of payoff to keep her quiet. But instead, he handed her a small black envelope. Curious, she opened it. Inside was a single gold-embossed card. An invitation, dinner at La Belle Étoile. Tonight. 8 p.m. The chef's table. Her eyes flicked back up to his. What is this? A second chance, he said simply. Come as my personal guest. No bill. No hidden corners. Just the experience you should have had. She wanted to refuse. To throw the card back in his face and tell him money couldn't fix humiliation. But another part of her, the part that had saved up for months, that had dreamed of that one perfect night, ached to say yes. Why? She asked quietly. Why bother? For the first time, his stern expression softened. Because everyone deserves respect. Even if I forgot that last night. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, she nodded. Fine. I'll come. The man gave a small, satisfied smile before turning back to the SUV. As the door closed, she stared at the invitation in her hand. Was this real? Or was she walking into another cruel joke? That evening, she stood outside La Belle Étoile again, this time in the same dress, the only nice one she owned. Her stomach twisted with nerves. What if this was a trick? What if they laughed at her all over again? But the moment she entered, everything was different. The same host who had sneered at her yesterday now stood stiffly, his face pale. Madam, he stammered. Right this way. He led her not to the kitchen's shadowy corner, but to the center of the dining room, to a secluded, candlelit table draped in white linen. The chef's table. Every eye in the room turned to her. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Who is she? Why is she sitting there? The owner stepped forward, ignoring the stares. Welcome back, he said, pulling out her chair himself. Before she could respond, the head chef emerged from the kitchen, a legendary figure known for his temper and brilliance. To everyone's shock, he bowed slightly to her. The menu tonight, the chef announced, is whatever you wish. Her breath caught. This wasn't just an apology. This was a revolution. The woman sat frozen at the chef's table, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of the fine linen napkin. The entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. The owner stood beside her, his presence commanding yet oddly respectful now, nothing like the cold arrogance of the night before. She looked up at the head chef, his hands clasped in front of his stained white apron. His sharp eyes studied her, not with judgment, but with something closer to curiosity. Whatever you wish, he had said. Her throat felt dry. I don't know what to choose. The chef's stern face cracked into the barest hint of a smile. Then let me surprise you. With that, he turned and disappeared back into the kitchen, leaving her alone under the weight of dozens of watching eyes. The owner lingered for a moment longer. Enjoy your meal, he murmured before walking away, leaving her at the center of the room like an unexpected guest of honor. The whispers around her grew louder. A well-dressed woman at a nearby table leaned toward her companion. That's the table reserved for celebrities. Why is she sitting there? The word stung, but before she could shrink back into herself, a waiter appeared with an amuse-bouche, a single, delicate bite of something golden and glistening on a tiny porcelain spoon. From the chef, the waiter said with a slight bow. She hesitated, then took it. The flavors exploded in her mouth, crisp, buttery, with a hint of truffle. Her eyes widened. She had never tasted anything like it. Another waiter arrived with a glass of champagne. Compliments of the house. As she sipped, a strange warmth spread through her. Not just from the alcohol, but from the surreal shift in how she was being treated. Last night, she had been invisible. Tonight, she was the mystery everyone whispered about. Course after course arrived, each more stunning than the last. Seared scallops on a bed of saffron-infused foam. A sliver of Wagyu beef so tender it melted like butter. A dessert that looked like a miniature glass sculpture, shimmering with edible gold. Halfway through the meal, the owner returned, pulling out the chair across from her. "May I?" She nodded, still cautious. He sat, folding his hands on the table. "I owe you an explanation." She set her fork down. "You don't have to." "I do." He exhaled sharply. "That restaurant you walked into last night? It wasn't mine." "Not really. Somewhere along the way, I let it become a place for people who care more about being seen than about the food. About the experience." He glanced around, his gaze lingering on the other diners, many of whom were still stealing glances at their table. "You reminded me of what I'd forgotten." She frowned. "How?" "Because you came for the right reasons," he said simply. "No pretense. No showing off. Just appreciation." She looked down at her plate, suddenly emotional. All she had wanted was one beautiful night. One moment where life didn't feel so heavy. Before she could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance. The host from the previous night, the one who had seated her near the kitchen, was arguing with a manager. His voice carried across the dining room. "You can't just fire me. Not over some nobody." The owner's face darkened. He stood abruptly. "Excuse me." As he strode toward the confrontation, the woman's stomach twisted. She hadn't asked for anyone to lose their job. She hadn't asked for any of this. But as the owner's sharp voice cut through the noise, "You disrespect a guest, you disrespect me." She realized something. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about something much bigger. The argument at the entrance ended as abruptly as it had begun. With one final sharp command from the owner, the furious host was escorted out by security. The restaurant fell into an uneasy silence, every diner pretending not to watch the scene unfold while stealing glances at the woman still seated at the chef's table. She stared down at her half-finished dessert, her appetite gone. The extravagance of the meal, the owner's apology, none of it sat right now. A man had just lost his job because of her. The owner returned, his expression unreadable. He opened his mouth to speak, but she cut him off. "You fired him?" Her voice was low, but it carried an edge. He hesitated, then nodded. "He treated you with disrespect. That's not tolerated in my restaurant." She pushed her plate away slightly. "I didn't ask for that." For the first time, the owner looked uncertain. He sat back down across from her, studying her face. "What would you have had me do?" She didn't have an answer. Part of her had wanted the host to feel even a fraction of the humiliation she'd felt last night. But now, faced with the reality of it, she just felt hollow. The owner leaned forward. "I didn't do it just for you," he admitted quietly. That kind of attitude, treating people as lesser because of how they look or what they can afford, it's poison. If I let it slide, nothing changes. She exhaled, turning the stem of her champagne glass between her fingers. Maybe he was right. Maybe this was about more than one bad night. But it still didn't sit right. A soft chime sounded from the owner's pocket. He pulled out his phone, glanced at the screen, and his jaw tightened. "I need to take this. Will you excuse me?" She nodded, and he stepped away, leaving her alone again under the flickering candlelight. The restaurant's buzz slowly returned to normal around her, though she could still feel eyes on her. The waitstaff moved with even more precision than before, as if afraid to draw the owner's ire. Then, a new presence approached her table, an older woman in an impeccably tailored pantsuit, her silver hair styled in a sleek bob. Without asking, she took the seat the owner had vacated. "So," the woman said, her voice smooth but sharp. "You're the reason my son is causing a scene tonight." Her son? The woman's stomach dropped. This wasn't just the owner, this was his mother. And from the look in her eyes, she wasn't pleased. The older woman signaled a waiter, who rushed over with a fresh glass of wine for her. She took a slow sip, never breaking eye contact. "Do you know how many people would kill for the treatment you're receiving tonight?" The question felt like a trap. She stayed silent. "And yet," the woman continued, "you look like someone just handed you a prison sentence instead of a 5-star meal." That stung. She straightened in her chair. "With all due respect, your son fired a man tonight because of me. That's not something to celebrate." The older woman's eyebrows rose slightly. Then, to her surprise, she laughed, a short, dry sound. "Ah. So you have a conscience. Interesting." Before she could respond, the owner returned, stopping short when he saw his mother at the table. "Mother. I didn't know you were coming." Clearly. She rose gracefully from the chair. "We'll talk later." With one last unreadable look at the younger woman, she walked away, leaving a heavy silence in her wake. The owner ran a hand through his hair, looking more exhausted than angry now. "I'm sorry about that." She shook her head. "Who are you?" He hesitated, then sat back down. Someone trying to do better. For the first time, she saw past the expensive suit and the commanding presence. There was something almost vulnerable in his expression. And that scared her more than his anger ever could. The rest of the meal passed in a blur. The chef sent out 2 more surprise desserts, but she barely tasted them. Her mind raced. Who was this man, really? Why had he gone so far for her, a complete stranger? And what did his mother want? As the waiters cleared the final plates, the owner pulled out a small black card and slid it across the table to her. "No more surprises," he said. "But if you ever want to come back, for any reason, just show this." She picked it up. It was a membership card, embossed with the restaurant's logo and her name. "Unlimited access," it read. Her fingers tightened around it. "Why are you doing this?" He met her gaze evenly. "Because the world needs more people who care about right and wrong." He stood, adjusting his cuffs. "My driver will take you home. Or anywhere else you'd like to go." She pocketed the card, unsure what to say. Thank you didn't feel like enough. Anger didn't fit anymore. As she stood to leave, the entire staff seemed to pause, watching her go. The owner walked her to the door, where the same black SUV from that morning waited. But as the driver opened the door for her, she hesitated. This wasn't over. Not even close. The black SUV idled at the curb, its door still open, waiting. The woman stood frozen on the sidewalk, the weight of the membership card burning in her pocket. Unlimited access. The words echoed in her mind. Was this a gift? A bribe? Or something else entirely? The owner watched her hesitate. Problem? She turned to face him, the city lights reflecting in his dark eyes. I can't accept this. His expression didn't change. Why not? Because this, she gestured between them, at the restaurant, at the car, isn't real. You don't know me. I don't know you. And now you're giving me some VIP pass like. Her voice trailed off as she struggled to find the words. Like I owe you, he finished. Yes. No. I don't know. She ran a hand through her hair, frustrated. I just don't understand what's happening here. A shadow of something like regret crossed his face. Then let me explain properly. He motioned to a small bench near the restaurant's entrance. 5 minutes. Against her better judgment, she sat. The night air was cool, the sounds of the city a distant hum around them. The owner sat beside her, his posture stiff, like a man unaccustomed to explaining himself. "My mother built that restaurant from nothing," he began. "When I took over, I promised to honor what she created." He glanced at the building's ornate facade. "Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of what that meant." She stayed silent, letting him talk. "Last night, when I saw how they treated you." He shook his head. "It was like looking at everything that's wrong with that place. With me." His jaw tightened. "I couldn't let it stand." She studied his profile, the sharp lines of his face, the tension in his shoulders. This wasn't just about restaurant etiquette. This was personal. "So this is your redemption?" she asked quietly. He turned to look at her then, his gaze intense. "No. This is me doing what I should have done years ago." A passing car's headlights illuminated his face for a brief moment, and in that flash, she saw something raw in his expression. Not guilt. Not pity. Shame. The realization hit her like a physical blow. This powerful man, this owner of a luxury restaurant, wasn't just apologizing to her. He was apologizing to himself. She looked down at her hands, suddenly understanding. "You were like me once, weren't you?" The question hung between them. For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, barely audible, "Yes." A waiter emerged from the restaurant, hesitantly approaching. "Sir? Your mother is asking for you." The moment shattered. The owner stood, his mask of composure sliding back into place. "Think about the card," he said. "No obligations." As he walked away, she noticed for the first time how his right hand trembled slightly before he shoved it in his pocket. She stayed on the bench long after the SUV had driven away, turning the card over and over in her fingers. Unlimited access. To what? A restaurant? A world she'd never belonged to? Or something else entirely? The next morning, she woke to the sound of construction outside her apartment. Groggy, she shuffled to the window and pulled back the curtain, then froze. The black SUV was back. But this time, it wasn't alone. A moving truck stood parked behind it, workers unloading tables, chairs, industrial kitchen equipment. And standing in the middle of the chaos, directing everything with sharp gestures, was the owner. In her neighborhood. She threw on clothes and rushed outside, still in her slippers. "What are you doing?" He turned, unsurprised to see her. "Opening a new restaurant." She gaped at him. "Here? In this neighborhood?" "Exactly." He motioned to the rundown storefront across the street, a place that had been vacant for years. Good food shouldn't only be for people who can afford gold leaf desserts. The workers carried in a commercial stove, the metal gleaming in the morning sun. She recognized the make, the same high-end brand used at La Belle Étoile. "You're serious," she breathed. He met her eyes. "Deadly. But why here?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Because this is where people like us live." Us. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Before she could respond, a familiar silver-haired figure emerged from a sleek town car parked down the street. His mother. And she did not look happy. The woman stood frozen on the sidewalk as the owner's mother marched toward them, her designer heels clicking sharply against the pavement. Every step radiated controlled fury. "You," the older woman spat at her son, ignoring the workers carrying equipment past them, "have lost your mind." The owner didn't flinch. "Good morning, mother." "Don't good morning me." She jabbed a manicured finger at the dilapidated storefront. "Explain this insanity." The woman from the restaurant, their woman, though she didn't yet realize it, took an instinctive step back. But the owner caught her subtle movement and surprised them both by positioning himself slightly between them. "I'm expanding the brand," he said calmly. "Into the slums?" His mother's voice carried through the street, making several workers pause uncomfortably. The word hit like a slap. The woman clenched her fists, her earlier sympathy evaporating. This isn't. Careful, mother. The owner's voice dropped dangerously low. These are our future customers you're insulting. The older woman's eyes flickered to the woman beside him, really seeing her for the first time, the faded sweatshirt, the worn slippers, the fire in her eyes. Understanding dawned. So this is about her. The accusation hung in the air. The woman opened her mouth to protest, but the owner spoke first. It's about doing what you taught me. Creating something real. For the first time, his mother hesitated. The standoff stretched as neighbors began peeking through curtains. The woman couldn't believe this was happening, that a battle over a high-end restaurant empire was playing out on her cracked sidewalk. Finally, the older woman exhaled sharply. We'll discuss this privately. She turned on her heel and strode back to her car. The owner watched her go, his shoulders tense. Give me an hour, he muttered, more to himself than anyone. The woman grabbed his arm before he could leave. You need to stop this. He frowned. Why? Because I never asked for any of this. Her voice broke. First you humiliate me, then you worship me, now you're starting some crusade in my neighborhood? The workers pretended not to eavesdrop as they carried in stainless steel shelving. The owner studied her face, then did something unexpected, he smiled. Not the polished restaurant owner smile, but something real and slightly sad. You're right, he said simply. You didn't ask for this. He glanced at the half-unloaded truck. But it's not really about you anymore, is it? Before she could respond, he walked toward his mother's waiting car, leaving her standing in the middle of the street surrounded by the beginnings of a revolution she'd accidentally started. 3 hours later, she was scrubbing her kitchen counter when a knock startled her. Through the peephole, she saw the owner alone on her doorstep, no SUV in sight. She yanked open the door. What now? He held out a set of blueprints. I want your input. She didn't take them. On what? The menu. His eyes were brighter than she'd ever seen them. My mother's agreed to the venture, on one condition. She crossed her arms. Let me guess, no poor people allowed? That we make it truly great. He shook the blueprint slightly. Food worthy of our name, at prices this community can afford. Impossible margins. Which is why I need someone who understands both sides. The implication sank in slowly. You want my help? I want your honesty. He glanced past her into the small apartment. May I come in? Against every instinct, she stepped aside. They sat at her rickety kitchen table, the restaurant tycoon in his $1,000 suit and the woman in her second-hand clothes, poring over plans for what would become the most unlikely high-low dining experiment the city had ever seen. These prices are still too high, she said, circling a number. He rubbed his temples. At that cost, we'll use local suppliers instead of your fancy imports. She tapped the paper. The bodega on 5th gets fresh produce every Thursday. Half the price, same quality. He blinked, then slowly smiled. You're good at this. The compliment warmed her more than it should have. As they worked, she noticed how different he seemed here, his sleeves rolled up, his perfect hair mussed from running his hands through it. This wasn't the polished owner or the remorseful rich boy. This was someone she could almost like. Night had fallen when they finally stopped, her tiny kitchen filled with scribbled notes and empty coffee cups. He stood to leave, then hesitated at the door. You never told me your name. She hesitated. Does it matter? Not to the restaurant. His gaze was unsettlingly direct. To me. The air between them charged. She opened her mouth. Bang bang bang. The sudden pounding on her door made them both jump. Open up. A gruff voice shouted. Police. Her blood ran cold. The owner frowned and reached for the door, but she grabbed his wrist. Don't. Through the thin wood, the voice snarled, we know he's in there. That restaurant bastard. Her eyes widened. How could they possibly? Then she remembered the workers, the neighbors watching. Word traveled fast in this neighborhood. And not everyone liked rich outsiders making waves. The owner's face hardened. He pulled out his phone. I'll call. No. She gripped his arm tighter. You don't understand. If the cops are here now, that means someone called them specifically. She swallowed hard. And in this neighborhood? That's never good. Outside, another voice joined the first. Last chance to come out quiet. The owner looked at her, truly understanding the danger for the first time. They were trapped. The pounding on the door shook the walls. The woman's pulse roared in her ears as she dragged the owner away from the entrance. Back door, she whispered urgently, pulling him toward her tiny bedroom. He resisted. I'm not running from. Those aren't real cops, she hissed. The color drained from his face. She yanked open her closet, shoving aside clothes to reveal a hidden panel in the wall, a remnant from the building's Prohibition-era past. Through here. Now. The owner stared at the dark passage. Are you? Do you want to die tonight? She snapped in a harsh whisper. Another thunderous bang on the front door. Wood splintered. That decided it. They crawled into the narrow space just as the front door burst open. The woman carefully slid the panel closed behind them, plunging them into utter darkness. The air in the passageway smelled of dust and old brick. They crouched motionless, pressed together in the cramped space, listening to heavy boots stomp through her apartment. Check the bedroom, the gruff voice ordered. The owner's breath came fast and shallow next to her ear. She reached out in the dark, finding his hand, squeezing it hard in warning. Stay silent. Drawers slammed. Furniture overturned. Then. Boss ain't gonna like this, a second voice muttered. Shut up and keep looking. Her fingers tightened around the owner's. She knew that, boss. Everyone in the neighborhood did. Marco Valesco, the local businessman who controlled every food supplier, every liquor license, every grease trap inspection in the district. And they just set up a restaurant on his turf without permission. After an eternity, the intruders left. Still, they waited 10 more minutes in the suffocating dark before she dared move. Who were they? The owner whispered as they emerged. She surveyed the wreckage of her apartment, overturned couch, shattered dishes, her few precious belongings scattered. Your new business partners, she said bitterly. Or rather, the people who think they own all the restaurants around here. He stepped over a broken lamp, face hardening as he took in the damage. This is because of me. Because of us, she corrected, though her hands shook as she righted a chair. You don't understand what you're walking into. This neighborhood? It's got rules. Systems. You can't just. I don't care. His voice was steel. No one threatens my people. My people. The word sent an unexpected shiver through her. She opened her mouth to argue, but his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then quickly answered. Mother? No, I'm fine. There's been, he listened, his expression growing grimmer by the second. When? No, don't engage them. I'm coming. He hung up, face pale. They hit the restaurant site. Tore apart everything we'd unloaded. Her stomach dropped. How bad? Bad enough. He headed for the door, then stopped. You should stay here. It's not safe. She barked a laugh. You saw my apartment. Nowhere's safe now. Grabbing her jacket, she followed him out into the night. The scene at the storefront was worse than she'd imagined. The gleaming kitchen equipment now lay in twisted ruins on the sidewalk. Flour sacks burst open like gutted animals. Someone had spray-painted, "Stay Out," across the boarded windows in angry red letters. The owner's mother stood amidst the wreckage, her silver hair gleaming under the streetlights. When she saw them approach, her composure cracked for the first time. "They waited until the workers left," she said, voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Cowards." The owner knelt, picking up a shattered porcelain plate. "We rebuild." His mother shook her head. "You don't understand, Mijo. The police came and left immediately. No report. Nothing." She glanced at the woman, then back to her son. "These people own the neighborhood." The woman hugged herself against the chill night air. "Marco Valesco," she said quietly. "He controls all the restaurant supply chains here. Kickbacks, protection money, the whole system." The older woman's eyes narrowed. "And you know this how?" "Because I've lived here my whole life." The words burst out louder than intended. "That's how it works. You either pay or you disappear." A tense silence fell. The owner stared at the ruins of his dream, then abruptly straightened. "Then we'll pay." Both women stared at him. He turned to his mother. "Call the board. Liquidate my shares in the Miami location." Her gasp was audible. "That's your largest. And transfer ownership of the flagship to you." He kept talking over her protests. "Move enough capital to cover whatever this Valesco wants for protection, and then triple it." The woman couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You're just going to give in?" He met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw something dangerous in his gaze. "Oh no," he said softly. "We're going to buy the whole damn system." His mother went very still. Then, slowly, she smiled, a razor-thin, terrifying thing. "Ah. I see." The woman looked between them, confused. "See what?" The owner picked up a single unbroken wine glass from the debris, holding it up to the streetlight. "That sometimes," he said, watching the light refract through crystal, "the best way to kill a snake is to feed it until it bursts." Dawn was breaking when they finished their plans in the back of the mother's town car. The woman rubbed her tired eyes, struggling to process everything she'd just agreed to. "So let me get this straight," she said. "You're going to let Valesco think he's extorting you, while secretly documenting every payment?" The owner nodded. "And you want me to be the go-between because I speak the language?" His mother answered this time. "Because they'll never suspect you're working with us. Not after last night's performance." She thought of the ransacked apartment, the threats. "And if Valesco finds out?" The owner handed her a brand new phone. "Speed dial 1 goes straight to my private security team. But he won't find out." His confidence sent another shiver through her. "Not until it's too late." She stared at the phone, then at the two wealthy, dangerous people watching her expectantly. Somewhere along the way, she'd crossed from being a victim to being an accomplice. The owner extended his hand. "Partners?" The neighborhood would never be the same. Neither would she. After a long moment, she took his hand. "Partners." The woman stood outside Marco Valesco's office, a backroom of a nondescript deli that everyone knew but no one talked about. Her palms were slick against the envelope of cash in her jacket pocket. The owner's words echoed in her mind. "Make him believe you're scared. Make him believe we're beaten." She took a shaky breath and pushed through the door. The room reeked of cigar smoke and stale beer. Valesco, a bull of a man with a spiderweb tattoo creeping up his neck, leaned back in his chair, grinning as she entered. "Well, well. The little messenger bird returns." His two enforcers flanked him, arms crossed. The same men who'd trashed her apartment. She forced herself to meet their eyes, her pulse hammering. "I have the first payment." Her voice barely wavered as she slid the envelope across the stained table. Velasco made a show of counting the bills, licking his thick fingers with each turn of a page. "Your rich friends catch on quick." He tossed the envelope to a lackey. "Tell them next week's payment doubles." Her stomach twisted, but she nodded. "They'll pay." Velasco's grin widened. He stood, circling her like a shark. "Funny thing. I asked around about you." His breath was hot and sour in her face. "No family. No connections. Just a little mouse who got lucky." A calloused finger traced her jawline. "Be a shame if something unlucky happened." The threat hung in the air. She willed her knees not to buckle. "Understood," she whispered. Velasco laughed, slapping her cheek just hard enough to sting. "Good girl. Now run along." Outside, she made it 3 blocks before ducking into an alley to vomit. The hidden microphone in her jacket, the one feeding everything to the owner's lawyers, felt like a lead weight. A black SUV pulled up silently beside her. The window rolled down. "Get in," the owner said. The back of the SUV was a mobile command center. Laptops glowed, headphones fed real-time audio from her wire, and the owner's mother scrutinized legal documents. The owner handed her a bottle of water. "You did good." She wiped her mouth, hands still trembling. "He's going to keep raising the price. And when you stop paying, we won't need to." The mother held up a tablet showing a live news feed. The headline blared, "FBI arrests dozen in restaurant kickback scheme, more expected." The woman gaped. "But, how?" "We just met with him." The owner allowed himself a small, vicious smile. "While you were playing scared, our team was raiding 3 of his warehouses. The FBI's been building a case for years. They just needed proof he was shaking down new businesses." The realization hit her like a truck. "You used me as bait." "No." His smile faded. "We gave you a choice. And you helped take down a man who's terrorized your neighborhood for decades." The SUV pulled up to the restaurant site. Instead of the wreckage from last night, the sidewalk bustled with workers, real contractors this time, under police protection. The owner opened his door. "Coming?" 1 month later, Étoile du Nord opened to lines around the block. The menu featured the owner's mother's original recipes, dishes from her immigrant childhood, updated with modern flair. Prices were slashed to neighborhood standards. And the wine list? Half from local shops Velasco no longer controlled. The woman stood near the kitchen, watching the owner greet customers, families, couples, even kids in their Sunday best. No VIP sections. No judgmental stares. His mother appeared beside her, handing over a glass of champagne. "To new beginnings." She clinked glasses hesitantly. "Why me?" The question had burned in her chest for weeks. "Of all the people you could have helped. You stood up for yourself when no one else would," the older woman said simply. "That's the kind of person worth betting on." Across the room, the owner caught her eye and smiled, a real one, warm and unguarded. Her face heated. She looked away, but not fast enough to miss his mother's knowing smirk. The months passed in a whirlwind. She learned the business from the ground up, inventory, staffing, even helping design their second location. The owner, true to his word, gave her unlimited access. And then one rainy Tuesday, he gave her something else. The papers sat between them in his office, a partnership agreement. "You built this as much as I did," he said. She stared at the documents, then at him. "Why are you really doing all this?" He leaned back, considering. "Because I spent years building temples to excess." "And you?" He nodded toward the dining room, where regulars laughed over shared plates. You reminded me what food is really for. She picked up the pen. Years later, when Étoile became a citywide chain, still affordable, still welcoming, the woman would sometimes pass La Belle Étoile, its gilded doors now looking strangely outdated. And if she ever spotted a nervous solo diner being led to a bad table, she'd walk right up, flash her old membership card with a wink, and say, "Let me show you to the chef's table." Because everyone deserves respect. And second chances.